Hello, everyone out there. Hello, podcast listeners. Thank you guys for tuning in today. It is episode 3 of On the Day I Said I Do, and you have tuned in to a very special episode of the Book Club edition. I love books, and I feel that books can help you grow and see things from a different perspective. They can take you to a whole other world, and they can help you just change ultimately. And so I thought it'd be a great idea to start a book club within the podcast. So originally, I saw a post from a friend on social media recently, and that's how this whole episode came to life. I saw a quote that a friend posted, and oftentimes you see a quote, you're like, you don't know who the person is. You're like, don't count each day by the seeds that you harvest or the plants that you harvest, but rather the seeds that you gather, or something like that. Something all philosophical and deep. And oftentimes you'll see the name John Robertson, and you're like, I have no idea who John Robertson is, but that was a deep post, and that was a deep quote, and I really loved it. So when I saw this post the other day, I was like, wow, I actually know the person who made this quote. And it got me thinking about where I knew this person from. And so today, I will be shining light on the phenomenal author and speaker, Miss Fawn Weaver. And she is the author of The Happy Wife's Club and The Argument-Free Marriage. And she has been interviewed by several different people. She's been on different podcasts, and she does TED Talks too. She has a really amazing story, which I just thought was really great. And you would never believe that she left home when she was like 15 years old. She dropped out of school, tried to commit suicide twice, and so much more. But I thought it'd be a good idea to talk about this book because of how much quality is packed into the pages. And I know that lots of people are looking for what it takes to have a good marriage. So this book is for people who want to take their marriage from great to even better, or from good to great. And for women who are not yet married, but want to get some tips on how to just jump right in there and get this thing going on the right track. So when watching the interview, because I didn't actually read the book per se, but in seeing this interview that she was on, I thought it would be a great book to talk about with you guys if you haven't already heard about it, and get the book and start talking about it and discussing it because it's so deep. And so I ended up seeing it on the Priscilla Shirer show, and she is the lady who plays the wife on the movie War Room. And I just thought it'd be a great story to talk about because she goes, the first thing she said was, everybody knows that marriages are hard and they can be really tricky. But today, you hear so much bad stigma behind them. And it's something that people are doing every single day. People are getting married every single day by the tons. But it's so crazy because there's so much bad stigma that comes behind them. And so she mentions how most people who are married are not good advertisers for marriage. As soon as people start talking about marriage, it begins to get depressing. Especially if you talk to like a single man who is in his prime. As soon as him and his homeboys are talking about marriage, and other people too, you often hear the term ball and chain, or now you gotta hang up your player jersey, or you only gonna have one woman for the rest of your life. And so the narrative, I think, needs to change, because there are some men who actually are ready to hang up their player jersey, who's actually ready to be with one woman for the rest of their life, and they're okay with that. I think she talked about a statistic that said 53% of marriages succeed. They go on to live together happily ever after. And then there's 47% of marriages that fail. So she was interested to see where all the happily married people were. And she knew that it had to be more people who were happily married than just her and her close friends. Excuse me. Sorry, y'all. But she knew that there were more happy people. It just seemed like they weren't telling their stories. In fact, it was like they were just quiet and silent about it all. So the only group that's advertising marriage are the people who are unhappy. And just when you think people around you are talking negatively about marriage, so is the media. The media and entertainment, things like social media, have a large portion to do with the content being put out about marriage. And it got her thinking that happy doesn't sell. People always want to hear the drama. Drama sells. The cheating husband, the divorce sells. And not a lot of people are shining light on the beauty of marriage. And so she, Miss Fawn Weaver, decided to travel the globe to interview couples who had been married at least 25 years or more. And everyone else around them in their community said that they were the it couple. She said she didn't want to interview couples that had been, that are trying to front in public and sweep things under the rugs, but rather the ones that others had observed and said that they were the real deal. And she wanted to interview couples who had been through miscarriages, infertility. Their finances had been high. Some finances had been low. And at the end of the day, 25 years later, they're still holding hands and still laughing at each other's jokes. I thought it was really cool that she was a GM in the hotel industry, and she knew lots of people from around the world. So get this. She got to go to Canada, South Africa, the Philippines, New Zealand, Austria, Croatia, Rome, and she would have went to Antarctica, but she said that that seventh couple, it was just not going to happen, because she was like literally nobody there. That 25 years in Antarctica, and she said it just did not happen. But through all of her research, she had found connecting dots that connected all the women to each other and what made them happy wives. And I said, wow, that is really like thought-provoking to say that you travel to the 7 corners of the earth to figure out where all the happy women were and how are people making their marriages last. And I said, wow, this is what my show is all about. And I promote this because I feel that there aren't enough women who are happy and are just okay and okay with that, and in solidarity to say, I'm happy in my marriage. But like she said, that the more common trend around marriage is people saying how it isn't working for them. And everybody knows marriage is not perfect, but it's about finding that one person that you're willing to try to tough it out with through it all. And so she says that no matter where they lived, what their religion was, what their background was, how much they had in the bank, or how they were raised, these things that made the women and their husbands happy were the same. there were 12 connecting dots that they had that showed commonalities. She described marriage, like a happy marriage, as anything that makes you happy, content, and whole. But not necessarily satisfied, because happy and satisfied are two different things. And so when people mention getting caught up in comparison and keeping up with the Joneses, this is exactly where they fail, because everybody knows social media can be like a place to see lots of happiness and joy, to keep up with your friends and family and the things that are going on in their lives. But let's remember that these are only the highlights of their life. Some people only post, the good things that are going on with them. And so you sitting here thinking, oh, I got to keep up with this couple, and doing it sometimes unconsciously, not even really realizing that you're competing, but you're trying to keep up with them, and you don't even know the whole half of their story. And so she's saying that focus on your own marriage, your own truth, and your only competition is the one that you guys as a married couple come up with for yourself. You are your only competition. So you have to figure out what you want to build together, and that's going to look different for everyone. I like how she pointed out what makes you happy at the end of the day. These were the things that made it a happy wife and or marriage at the end of the day. And those were attributes of life. Those were things that nothing that money could buy. Things like peace, and love, and forgiveness, and joy. And she says that all the women that she interviewed were really strong and knew exactly who they were. I think it's important for women to always be very conscious of who they are, no matter what stage they are in their lives, to hold on to that boldly and confess it to yourself every day, who you are and what you want over your life. And then when you marry somebody else who knows the same thing, it just works well. And so I like that she said that they were strong and they knew who they were. Of course, that's a process, I'm sure. But at that point, 25 years of marriage, that's wonderful. So let's jump into it. On the show, she mentioned that it's 12 commonalities, but she only talked about 3. The top 3 were mutual respect, trust, and they all had some type of daily ritual. Now, for mutual respect, I thought this one was like phenomenal for it to be like number 1, because everybody always says treat others like you want to be treated. And respect is thrown around so loosely, and we all know how that goes. But when you're in a relationship and you see 2 people who respect each other, it's something about that you say, wow, they really got it figured out, because they understand the way the other person wants to be respected and they execute it. And she says one of the issues that marriages have is opposite levels of respect. And when couples who are not happily married argue, they go into separate team modes. Like they automatically forget that they're on the same basketball team and start working against each other, shooting into the opponent's basketball goal. And she says that that's like totally backwards, that you shouldn't go into separate team mode, that if you want to be a happily married couple, when you're going through obstacles, you're supposed to turn your swords to the issue and not necessarily to each other. Because remember, we don't fight against flesh and blood. So it was an analogy that she gave that said, it was talking about how people who struggle with financial hardship, how do they get through that rocky area? And she gave an example of this lady. She was on the plane, and there was this flight attendant who was walking up the aisles picking up trash while there was an enormous amount of turbulence on this plane. She says that her and the guy that's beside her, they like, clenching their seat belts, holding on to the rail, just trying to hold on for dear life, saying their prayers because they're thinking, surely this is it. But the lady's walking up the aisle and she's like, trash, anyone, with a really blank face, like everything's fine. And she said that the thing is why people don't make it through financial hardship is because they're not looking at how the story ends. The lady who was the flight attendant picking up trash, she already knew how the story unfolded. She knows that 99% of those planes that encounter turbulence, she knows that only 1% of those planes actually crash. And so she just thinks in her mind that everything's going to work out fine. Everything's going to be okay because she's already been down this road. She already knows how it goes. So it's how you handle the situation that makes the difference. And I thought this was like mind-blowing because you don't realize that some people never make it past the turbulent stage of their marriage because they're so used to walking away or thinking that the grass is greener on the other side, that they don't never really stick it out to see if they are going to make it. And so just knowing that there will be turbulence is encouragement enough to say, I just have to think about how to deal with it when it comes. So number 2 was trust. And I was thinking, okay, well, trust, everybody's trust is different. And she mentioned how you get to, learn to trust your spouse. And that stems from building up that person's ego, building up your husband's ego, and knowing that when a child feels that you have their they have your support, for instance. So if a child feels safe with you, they have the factor of trust. They know that you're going to feed them. They know that you're going to clothe them. They know that they have a shelter to protect them. They know that you are going to protect them. And we can do the same things with our husbands and or spouses when they know that we're going to take care of them in the bedroom or in the kitchen or in general. And so building that up for them to know, wow, this person consistently takes care of me in this way, so I can trust them because they are not inconsistent. And they have built up a sense of dependency, and I know that I can depend on that. And so I thought it was really great that she mentioned that trust was one of the big ones. She says that she talked to a lady about the feminist movement and how this lady had been a part of the feminist movement, all of them, that had happened up until now. And she said that the problem with all of those feminist movements was that they taught the women to put their children first and their husbands last. And it was okay if we put the man out, but we would never do that to our children. And so she said with all the good that happened with those movements for women, it said that we put our children before our men. And it left me thinking that we have never really got our mindset out of that up until now. And she says that when we put our children before our men, the men don't feel protected and feel that they have no one to trust. So oftentimes they'll get into these relationships and the women will put their children before them and everybody else because they're strong. They're not as emotional as us. They're not as vocal as us. So they don't articulate that they need someone to trust, but they do. And so it was good to see that this was on the commonality of things that was needed in a good marriage. Number 3 that I thought was really great was a daily ritual. And I love this one. This was so good, and I wanted to adopt this with my husband as well, because sometimes we're not as consistent with this. But she said that people who were married 25 years or more, they all had sorts of rituals. They might have been different, but they were all the same. They all had one. So one of the rituals would look like just morning coffee time, where the wife would get up, they would open the blinds, she would lay out the newspaper, get the daily routine going, and they would sit down and have morning coffee together. And they would talk about everything that was going to go down for that day. Another couple would do the same thing, but they did it in their bedroom. And the children knew that they were not allowed to interrupt during that time. That gave them an opportunity to, talk about things that were going to go down for that day if it was a very busy day, or just to say, don't forget to pick the kids up from soccer, or the doctor's appointment is at 11. It's a way for you to build trust within your relationship and communication. That way everybody's aware of what's going to happen for that day, and it gives you a bonding time. Another one she said was where the couple went to dinner 30 minutes before dinner, and the children knew that that was mommy and daddy time as well. So I was like, wow, that blew me away. Like, we don't have that as consistently as we should. So I thought that was something good to incorporate into your relationship. Fawn actually mentioned that she and her husband have very busy schedules. So after interviewing all these women, she was like, oh, I got to get us one too. We got to start a daily ritual. I think it'd be really good. And so when her husband is out of town, or she is out of town, during that same time in which they spend every day, if they're out of town, she's making sure that she's calling him or he's calling her, so they can still have that time together, even if they are apart. So I love that. And I also think about, I went to a book release party for my a local lady in my town, who she and her husband have a prayer time where they call each other around the same time every day to talk and pray together about issues in their marriage or over their community or over their ministry. And that is a time solely for them. And it's like a lunch break, but it's so cool that they set that time apart every single day to make time for each other. So now, I know you guys are thinking like, okay, what about sex? Again, like I said, I did not read the book, so I'm not sure if it came up. But one of the times Priscilla asked her about sex and, did it come up? And she said that it only came up once. And it was a result of speaking about something else. So it was just a reference about speaking about something else. And she said that the reason why is because it's a cycle. That when you take care of what you need to take care of on one side, the other side will take care of itself. So if you're constantly building up your wife and or husband, and you're giving them mutual respect, and if they have trust, and you guys have a daily routine, sex is not going to be the most important thing in your relationship, because it's going to take care of itself. Because that person is going to want to give back to you what you're giving to them. And I thought that was like, let the church say amen. Like, it was like an epiphany, because oftentimes we think about men and how they're built to be more sexually inclined. And sometimes as women, we're like, we can do without it. But we don't need to do without it, because we need to make sure that our husbands are satisfied in that way, since they're ultimately created that way. And so I was like, wow, if you're taking care of what you're supposed to take care of on one side, the other side will take care of itself, and it won't seem forced, and it won't seem like a burden, a job, because oftentimes I hear women talking about sex like it's a job, and it's supposed to be enjoyable, and it's supposed to be a relief system too. And the tying of souls, the more you do it, the better, the closer you get. So, moving on. There was a question and answer portion of the interview. And I just thought about, talking about some of these questions, because I thought they were really great. It was just so deep. So, the first question was, there was a part in the interview where she mentions, what if your relationship with somebody you're with is not supportive? What if you're with somebody who is not supportive and does not want to see eye to eye with you? And she said that this book is not for you, but rather you guys to get counseling. She said this book is for people who are in a good marriage and they just want to take it from good to greater. So this is not to say that if you feel like you are in a bad marriage or something that is not healthy or toxic, this book is not for you. This is for people who want to take it from good to greater. And nothing is wrong with counseling. I think there's a lot of bad stigma around counseling too. For somebody who wants to become a therapist and or counselor in the future, I had to change my mindset about counseling, because you automatically think, okay, counseling, you're doing that before you get married, pre-counseling, and you might do it once you get married, just to get things started, or blase. But I've heard people going to counseling regularly so that there are no problems that can take over your marriage, to keep things, new and fresh. So counseling is a type of thing that you do, just like a car. You put oil in your car. You got to put oil in your marriage. You got to put gas in your car to keep it running. Counseling is like gas. It keeps giving you new strategies to sort through issues in your relationship. So I think it's totally healthy for her to say, this is not the book for you, but yet you need to go to counseling. So for people who feel like it's not worth it, when the first time I went by myself, and it was one of the best things that I had ever done. And it changed my life and my perspective. And so I would encourage you, if you have never went to counseling or marriage counseling, definitely do so. As well as there's so many types of counseling and therapy. So don't think that there's not one for you. And there's Christian counseling, and there's counseling that you can get outside of the church. And I think both of them are just as effective, and both of them are both meaningful. You just have to figure out which one works for you. And sometimes seeing both of them is not a bad idea either. The next question was, should single women hang out with women who are happily married? And the answer that Fawn gave was yes. She said that you should hang around with women who are happily married just to observe their interactions together, because it's something about once they get around each other, or once you get around them hanging with each other, it's like a fountain. You can't turn it off. She says that it's something you want to see. I know oftentimes you'll see a grandma and a grandpa that's been together for several years, and everybody loves them. And everybody loves to be around them because of the way they interact with each other. That is what you call a happy marriage. And so when you get around them, you're like, I just enjoy them. Like, I want to be like them when I grow up and, make this thing work for the long haul. And so she says that you should not listen to the advice of those who are not happily married, and I cannot agree more. If there's not one thing that I have learned in marriage, is to not listen to advice. And I ain't saying that that you cannot get advice from people, but it's best to get it from wise counsel and people who are actually married. Because if you are talking to somebody who doesn't value marriage the way you do, or has the same standards when it comes to marriage as you do, they're going to constantly make you think that marriage is not worth sticking through. And so I love that she said, would you take advice from somebody who is bankrupt but trying to give you financial advice? And it hit the nail on the head. Wow, there you have it, Larcy. Make sure that is something that you are very rooted in getting advice from. And so that was wonderful. There's another question from this lady. She said that she's in her 30s, and she asked, what if there are no good men who will pursue you? And she didn't say that they weren't there. She said they're just not pursuing. And Fawn's answer was so crazy. She says, the first thing is, you're not looking for men. You are looking for a man, and the man is actually looking for you. So the thing is, don't worry. And whoever he is, he's already been chosen for you. So in the meantime, create the life of your dreams while you're single, and allow that to come to you. So the very thing that you want, become it, and then allow it to come to you while you're creating the life of your dreams. If that's, the job, the dream job, do it. Don't wait around. Just do it. If you want to buy a home, don't wait on that woman. Don't wait on that man. Do it. It's all about your mindset. And so I really just thought, again, that's a lot of knowledge, just a gem being dropped right there in the midst of everything. Another question was, in what ways can a new wife get off to a great start by building happy elements into her marriage? And Fawn's answer for that was also the same. Get around some happily married women if you want to build a marriage that's going to last a lifetime. I cannot tell you how many negative people talk badly about marriage who, first of all, are not even married and or are married, and will just be very miserably talking about marriage when you have the choice to stay or leave, or make out of it what you want. And so I love that she says, get around some happily married women. And that sometimes can be a challenge, but it's so worth it, because birds of a feather flock together. So you will learn so much from them. She talked about when she went to, I forget where she went, but I think it might have been in Rome, where she said there was a lady who was about 68 years old. And she said that if the women that she hung out with would talk negatively about her husband while she was there, she would not hang out with them anymore. She said, because I don't want to have that negative mindset about my husband with you, and I'm going to choose to not have you in my circle if it means that you're willing to talk about your husband in front of me when your husband is a reflection of you, and vice versa. And I thought that also was powerful, because how many times do we hang out with people who talk bad about their husbands, or get together just to be like, he do this or he don't do that, or he don't put enough time in with me, and blase, and it's like, that gets a little old after a while. You kind of want to be around somebody who's going to, encourage you and allow you to see the good things within your marriage. One of the last questions she put that I thought was also really thought-provoking was, what is the most important thing to look for in a man if this is going to be a happy marriage? And Fawn's answer took me for a loop, because she said, how much does he respect you? And she then said, well, how do you know that he respects you? And she said, well, the real question is, how much do you respect yourself? Because whatever amount of respect that you have for yourself, he is supposed to live up and honor whatever amount of respect that you have for yourself. And that person is respecting you in a way that you want to be respected and the way that you deserve to be respected. And so it just was like, wow, that means that I'm in charge of how this person treats me based off how I treat myself. And because they see me daily and they're around me, they know how much I respect myself, and they want to honor me by respecting me, and vice versa. So I just thought that was so powerful to say, you are in charge of that. You want to see if that man is willing to respect any and everything about you, including your standards, because they are totally, they can be different. When two people come together, their standards can be completely different. That's why dating and getting to know them is so important. And two, your boundaries. Some men are not willing to respect boundaries, and women. If you specifically say, I don't want you to be friends with a woman, and he decides to be friends with a woman, or vice versa, where the girl decides to keep being friends with her male counterparts, and you don't want her to be friends with a man, that's not respecting me, because I don't trust that, or he doesn't trust that. So I just thought, like, wow, that respect thing is super important. There was also like a comment part where she was just throwing in little gems all in through there. And so I wanted to point out some of those things that she talked about, because I just couldn't walk away from this the same. She points out that she is a very strong woman, and I'm sure dropping out of school and leaving home when you're 15, it can bring you to a point of real strength. But she says that, even after all of that, she became her own boss, where, she runs her own brand. And so out in the world, she's a boss, a female boss. But when she comes home, she is no longer the boss, and she is able to allow her husband to lead in the way that he is supposed to. She is helping in the way that she's supposed to as a helpmate, because women, we are helpmates. Our husbands are the lead, but we are ultimately teammates. And I related to this so much, because I myself feel like I am a very strong person, and in the beginning of my marriage, it was very hard for me to, be submissive and be more inclined to my husband's opinion for our lives as the lead. And so I had to learn how to release a lot because it was not my place to say what was ultimately best for us, but rather us saying what's best for us. And I love the analogy that she gave, talking about, teammates, and how you're on the same team, and you can be a boss in the streets, but when you come home, it's okay to be soft. It's okay to be delicate to your husband. It's okay to build him up in the ways that he needs to be, instead of being like the nagging wife who feels that he needs to change, but think that you can make the change for him. But rather, I'm a boss in the streets, but when I come home, I trust my husband enough to have the family's back and know what's best for our family. And she said that it didn't come natural to her, This is not something to say, so, oh, I'm a perfect wife and I'm happy. No, not perfect, but willing to go the extra mile to make sure that our family is happy. And how everything she does now when it comes to marriage is a choice, because she didn't necessarily, have to be that way, but it is a choice. And she says that you should basically go to the college of your spouse. So for me, I would go to Nathaniel University to get my PhD, because I'm supposed to know his language. I'm supposed to know what he likes and what he dislikes, and how he likes to be honored, and things he likes when he gets home from work, things he likes before he leaves to go to work, and vice versa. We are supposed to learn and study our spouses so that, we're not oblivious to who they are and what makes them happy. I saw this, what was it, a video? Yeah, a video of Will Smith talking about him and Jada Pinkett Smith's relationship and what they've come to realize after all these years of marriage. And it was deep too, because he said, we just realized, he said, I had to eliminate myself from her happiness. I had to quit trying to make her happy and allow her to find the happiness within herself, and I find my happiness within myself, and we bring that together, but not in the aspect of me, Will, saying that he didn't want himself to be attached to her happiness, because for so long it was. And I would challenge women to make a list, some type of bucket list, some type of list of things that make you happy. For me, I made the list, and things that make me happy are the beach. I love water. So if I can't make it to the beach, I want to go to the pool, or I want to be on the lake. I want to be somewhere near the water. Fishing makes me happy. I like pictures and photography. Those types of things make me happy. I like sports. Certain things within sports make me happy. So me generating a list of things that make me happy, as well as a bucket list, because a bucket list can be things that you want to accomplish before you kick the bucket. And I did myself the honor of doing that as well a few years back, to see what things I could do to make me happy before I kick the bucket. And I found great fulfillment in knowing that I'm not putting so much pressure on my husband to be something he was never created to be. And I do know that my happiness comes from the Lord. My joy comes from the Lord. So it releases some of that burden from him to say, you are supposed to make me happy. You are supposed to complete me. But rather, the things in life, that the attributes of life, like she said, make me happy. And knowing that you guys, my family, is safe at the end of the night, and that we are okay in spite of when things get rocky, we're still okay. That is enough for me. So for me, that is where my happiness is attached to. And like I said, I would advise you guys to make that list, if you haven't already, of things that make you by yourself, that you don't have to do with anyone else, to make you happy. Fawn talked about speaking with this lady who was in a marriage for 30 years, who was not happy, so she went to go see a therapist. And the therapist advised her to write a list of everything she could think of that was negative about her husband. And she wasn't supposed to give it to him. She was just supposed to write it down so she could get it out. So by the time she had even finished this letter, she had thought that the same amount of time that it took me to write down all the bad things about her husband, she could have made a list for the good things and all the positive things that she thought that her husband did right out of the entire 30 years. And it just made her think, like, yeah, we've been through this and that, but all those good days outweigh the bad. And so this thing she brought up, she says, whatever you focus on is what will grow. So if you're the type of wife that is constantly going through your husband's phone, or always assuming that they're doing something that they might not be doing, then you might turn on a spigot of distrust or dishonesty, because you're now telling them that they're being dishonest when they're not. And you could start something that really isn't even there to start with. So she says, whatever you focus on will grow. So I would advise, if you are the person that feels like you need to constantly go through your man's phone, if there's not really a reason for that, and that person is still trying to build up trust after the fact, let that go. Because that can bound you from actually seeing if this person is really trying to earn back your trust, or for you to just trust them at all, because you might be letting them pay for something that they didn't even do, or something that happened in a past relationship. So focus on the good, and anything that is happening in the dark will come to the light. So there's no need to constantly do something as silly as going through phones and emails and stuff like that. Like stuff you do when you don't trust somebody, it's really not that deep. It really isn't. And so focus on the reason why you chose your mate. That's ultimately one reason why the woman says yes. It's one reason, and that is what you have to focus on and ease your way back out of the turbulence or the mess that is hurting your marriage. Because at the end of the day, you're like, well, I made a conscious choice to choose this person, and it was for a reason. And so when you focus on that, it's a little easier for you to say, I can work through this because this person is XYZ to me. And lastly, the only permanent thing in life, according to the Bible, is your marriage. It's the only thing that lasts a lifetime. And you want to make sure that you're nourishing it and you're catering to it just as if it were a job, because what you put into it is what you'll get back. And so whatever you speak over your marriage is what will come. I want to end the show with one last interview that she said that she did. She ended up talking to one of the top plastic surgeons in the world. And that lady was married to a judge. And she said she sat there and watched them dote over each other. And she said it was so good to see it, because this top plastic surgeon in the world, who, plastic surgeons make buku money, and, married to a judge, chances are, that lady's a boss. She running a huge company, and that is considered, a powerful woman in the world. But she said that it was good to sit around and watch them dote over each other, because she knew in that moment that lady, she was strong, but she knew that being strong didn't mean that she couldn't dote over her husband, and that doting over her husband didn't mean that she was weak, but rather she respected her husband enough to give him what he was already giving her. And I just love that, because as women, we are boss, regardless of whether we are stay-at-home moms, teachers, custodians, CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, entrepreneurs, whatever have you. As women, we are all bosses. And so when we come home, it is important to make sure that we turn that off, because that can get in the way of us having a successful marriage, as well as allowing our husbands to walk in the role that they were meant to walk in. And there's nothing worse than a nagging or disrespectful wife. And even if that man isn't who he needs to be, at least be who you're supposed to be and treat people the way they should be treated, even if they don't know who they are in themselves. Like, I think that you win people over when you treat them, or you treat them the way you would think that they should treat you. And I know that can be hard, but it's very important to make sure that as a woman, you're just leading by example, because we are the helpmates. We sometimes are good in solitude as women, but the Bible says that a man that finds a wife finds a good thing. And so everything that we bring to them is for their benefit, and it's gonna multiply. We're gonna make everything that it comes to that man multiply. And so we have to do our best in being diligent with the role that we have and understand how important that is. And if you're supporting and promoting and advertising your husband in a way that makes him feel good, you're going to be a happy wife, because he's then going to want to do the same for you. And ultimately, you do not want to get out in public and people see that you guys are divided. That is not a good example to marriage. You're not being a good promoter for the word marriage, and you want others to see you and say, wow, marriage can be fun, and good marriages do exist. So before we leave out, I just wanted to tell you guys that as of already now, there are over 1 million women a part of the Happy Wives Club. Yes! And I want you guys to tell a friend about the book. You guys can grab the book. You can buy it. You can look for it at a used bookstore, or you can even try to find it in your local library. But get the book, read it. I'm going to get it very soon, if not this week. And let's start a discussion about it, because there were so many gems in this interview that I just thought, wow, this would be so great, so powerful for women to grab and read about, and just allow it to change the dynamic in their marriage. And ultimately, I want this to be a show where people can have a place where they can draw hope from and insight from, and not a place to find out what a tea at and dig into people's business, but rather people who come and will say that marriage is not perfect, but they're happy with their spouse, and they want to talk about what God is doing in their lives, or what they are doing to help make sure that, the generation after them is very aware of what happy marriages look like. And so with all of that being said, I am going to be heading out, and as always, you guys can email me at onthedayIsaidIdo@gmail.com. Hold on, I'm sorry guys. As always, you can hit me up at onthedayIsaidIdo@gmail.com, and you can follow me on Facebook and Instagram. Check out episodes 1, 2, and 3 as of today on SoundCloud. And if you know any couples that would be a great show, a great person to be on the show, DM me and let me know, and I will see if I can get them on here. And until next time, you guys, be in love with one another. Fight for one another. Choose selflessness over selfishness. And everything will turn out just fine. Thank you guys for tuning in once again. I know it was a lot, but I wanted to tell people about this because it had me fired up. I will put the link for the interview that I saw at the bottom so you guys can tune in as well. Thanks for sticking around and listening to me and my craziness. And I love you guys. Take care. Be easy. Wah, wah.
I try to tell